How are you?
Good. Oh, I love your plants. Last
Thank you.
time we video chatted, I was admiring them too.
Oh, thank you so much. I love your bar cart.
Thank you. Yeah, so thanks for joining. Always good to see you. One of the things that
Of
I like
course.
to connect with is what you're doing, as well as is there anything from this experience that you're learning about yourself?
This experience is in like COVID.
Well, yeah, shelter in place and all that.
Um, well, I'm all things considered, I'm doing good. Um, I think the thing that I've been learning uh more and feeling more now than I ever have before, and I think like every other, or not every, but a lot of other young people can relate to this feeling is that it feels kind of isolating to be in a city where you don't have like your main community of like friends and family. I
Mhm.
moved here from the East Coast, and my partner's family mostly lives in LA. So we're kind of just like isolated up here. And when it's a situation like this where you're sheltering in place, it just kind of feels like lonely in a way.
Yeah,
Um, so I think part of me is realizing that like I should maybe prioritize living in a place that's like closer to more family.
yeah. I admit I've been having some random thoughts about, living in San Francisco and why I moved here and how much I spend to live here. And it,
Yeah.
it kind of sucks that am spending San Francisco rent money to basically sit in an apartment all day. So, uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
I think a lot of tech people, now that like there's more companies going or allowing remote work, they're all just like, wait, I don't have to live here anymore.
yeah,
And we're all just slowly like getting hit with that realization.
yeah. My dreams of becoming a digital nomad are in a weird thing because it's like, well, if I don't really need to live here, wait, but then I can't really travel. Ugh.
Right. Right. It's so hard to figure it out. But it's like you could also live somewhere where you would have wanted to travel, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. So, how is remote working going for you at Twitch?
Twitch has been super lenient about the remote work policy. Since I think like March 9th, we've been working from home, which I feel really good about because they were like super quick to
Mhm.
um, get work from home started during all this or when all this COVID stuff started.
Mhm.
Um, and for me personally, like I love working remote. I hate commuting. I don't really like care to be in an office. I like some meetings like being able to be face to face, and I like being able to just like grab someone and like go to a whiteboard and start, working out a thought or something.
Mhm.
Um, but you can just figure out ways to do that remotely, and I feel like it's just also more inclusive. Like we do have some remote people on our team, so now like we have to be cognizant of making sure the mics work or making sure everyone can see everything and stuff like that. So overall, for me, it's been a really positive experience. I would be like, okay, never going back to an office again.
I totally understand that.
Yeah,
So I would love to hear about your role at Twitch and like what you do, and as well as like how it compares to your previous role, which are both
sure.
design systems roles. Yeah.
Yeah, design systems roles I feel like are pretty similar wherever you go, especially if you're on the side of being like a hybrid design engineer
Right.
type of person, which I am. So at Twitch, I'm more on the code side of
Okay.
things. Our team is split into design and systems, and so I fall into the system side. And I'm more in charge of like building components and maintaining components and more of just like how our code library works and stuff like that. And so compared to like previous roles, I think I was doing similar stuff at Salesforce.
Yeah.
but different in ways because of the way Salesforce's stack works and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then in the role before that, I was doing like everything, like full on design and code. So I think now I'm just like focusing a little bit more on code.
Cool. I've never actually seen Twitch's design system. I know Amazon kind of keeps all their design systems internal, but I'd love to hear about it, like what it's like working on team and what your design system has and all that. Whatever you're allowed
Sure.
to say.
Yeah, we've like talked so many times about being able to open source our design system or even just like have a site that we can make public.
Mhm.
And I think that there are both some like legal issues, like you said, Amazon's, super uptight about being open with their tools. And then at the same time, I think because we don't have anything public, there's so many people on the team who are like, wait, but I just want to like fix one more thing before we share anything with anyone. But that being said, it's a pretty great design system, like compared to what I've seen out in the wild and compared to what I've worked with in the past. Like
Mhm.
it's right up there with everything else. We have a really amazing team of systems thinkers and people who focus on just design. We do all of our actual design work in Figma. So we have like a Figma library with all of our components. We have like a doc site that lists out all of our components similar to any other design system would. We use design tokens as well to
I was
power.
gonna ask.
Yeah, we use tokens. That's huge for us. Um, and then we provide people with HTML, CSS, and React. So we have all of the components built out in React. Some of them also including like stateful functionality, and we offer those to our like engineering consumers. So like twitch.tv, the team that runs that, they consume it and so on and so forth. um, and yeah, it's kind of like any other design system in that we have all the like same things, but I think what like one of the nice things about not being public is that like we can just kind of do whatever we want. So
Yeah,
like we aren't really like worried about scrutiny. We aren't really like worried about like, oh, does this look right or does that look right? It's kind of just we have more freedom in some ways to like do what we want.
yeah. And I guess one of the things I remember at Salesforce was we had to be careful like what components we showed sometimes, like because they could hint at future features. So we had to wait until those features launched. So I guess like with an internal design system, you can put whatever you want in there and not really worry about that.
I guess like the only time we have to worry is if we release a feature like into our Figma library
Mhm.
that or like a component that we still haven't like, I don't know, written the documentation for, or we haven't like worked out all the different use cases for, and we don't want designers to just like start, just see it and be like, ooh, new shiny thing, and then start using it. So that's like the only time, but that's still just like an internal thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. What is your team makeup like?
So there's four of us on the system side,
Mhm.
and we are responsible for handling the code. And then there are about four people on the design side,
Mhm.
and they handle most of like the Figma and illustrations and icons and colors, branding, all that kind of stuff. And then we have a director of our team, and she reports up to like a senior director. So
Okay.
on our team specifically, it's like 9 or 10 at this point. Yeah.
Are all the people that are on the system side hybrids too, or some of them more just solely engineering?
I think everyone's hybrid enough that like I think like two of us are like specifically hybrid. Like we started off in design and then ended up pivoting into this.
Okay.
Um, I think one of us is like more of like a front end engineer. Like he knows design. Like
Mhm.
he gets it. And I think that's like the biggest battle anyway for like
Yeah.
a front-end engineer, like he totally gets it. He like understands the difference between like if a designer's like, no, but I do need the 3 pixel like spacing, he's like, I get it, you know? So um I think, yeah, our system side is like mostly hybrids.
Cool. I'm um I'm curious just because, you know, I also worked on a product that was owned by Amazon at one time. How much does Amazon influence your design system choices and really, I mean, I guess also the product, but yeah.
Um, yeah, it's interesting because I before I joined, I thought that Amazon was going to have a heavier hand on what we do.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that Twitch is kind of allowed to exist how Twitch wants to, and I think it's probably a good thing that Amazon doesn't interfere too much with the way that we do our design work because our design is catered towards a much different audience.
Yeah,
And if we did have to abide by, you know, like Amazon standards and stuff like that, Twitch would look a lot more different and maybe not as engaging and fun.
yeah,
Um, but we aren't really forced to, you know, do anything that Amazon does, which is great because we get all this like creative freedom to make Twitch look more like a social app and look more, especially inviting to like younger users. I think like the only time Amazon comes into play is like if we need to put anything out there into the world, like if we were to make like a Twitch design system site public, I think we would have to like legally go through Amazon to figure out what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do, because I think then um there are more issues like how we faced at Salesforce where like if
mhm,
you release a component that could hint towards a feature and you know stuff like that.
yeah. I I feel like, yeah, like the Twitch aesthetic, like if you tamper with that aesthetic, like you could probably lose a lot of users because people were like, oh God, this looks like Amazon. So it totally makes sense that they would keep that totally separate.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't even know still that Twitch is owned by Amazon.
Which is probably a
Um,
good thing.
yeah, which like I think I don't know, I can't speak behalf on or
Mhm.
on behalf of the company, but it could be helpful for
Yeah,
people to not know that.
it reminds me of Heroku, and sometimes people forget Heroku is owned by Salesforce because they also,
Right,
coincidentally, also a purple brand, but have like their
right,
own unique look.
right. Yeah. I think like I think Salesforce does a good job of like I don't think people really know that Quip is owned by
Yeah,
Salesforce either. Um, yeah, it's probably good for these smaller companies.
yeah. The first product that I worked on when I was at Salesforce was called Do. It was like a social productivity product, and people didn't make that immediate connection either. And we didn't even say we worked at Salesforce. We just said we worked at Do. So yeah,
Yeah, I none of us ever say that we like work at Amazon. I figure that it's like only a thing people pepper in when they're like at job interviews or something like that.
yeah,
Otherwise it's like you don't really even need to bring it up. But it is like helpful um working at a company that is backed by
mhm,
a much larger organization like Amazon, which like similarly to Heroku or Quip, I can imagine like it it is helpful having a large company like fund you and
yeah,
be able to like back up some of your projects and stuff like that.
yeah. So one of the things I've found throughout most of my career is I tend to work on things that I don't even really use, with an exception of when I worked at Apple. Of course, I used the store product that I was working on, and then I used Do when that was a thing. But I didn't use Salesforce because I don't have sales needs. So, like, are you a gamer? Like, do you use Twitch?
Um, I don't use Twitch to game or
Okay.
like when I'm gaming ever. I'm not really interested in like live streaming myself doing
Mhm.
anything. I've like I'll watch streams here and there, but I'm not like a pro user of the product by any means. I understand why other people watch video game streams. Um, I just like, of all the things I would choose to watch, it's just like not up there for me. But I do play video games though here and there. And so it is like a space that I feel like I understand and I'm like adjacent to. Um, but I think that's like another really awesome thing about working at Twitch. It's like you don't have to be a gamer to work, like a super pro gamer to work there, which is great. And I think like something more interesting about it for me specifically is that like I worked at Salesforce before this with you, and before that I worked at a fashion tech company or a fashion tech startup in New York, and so I've never really like worked on social, and
Mhm.
so it feels really fun to work on a social product and like experience how like you can make one change and then all these people have like no problem just like letting you know straight up. Like
Oh
there's
yeah.
Reddit threads and there's just Twitter, messages, and it's just kind of crazy. So it is like a really interesting experience to like have such passionate users, not because it's like their job, it's just like something like a product they're interested in using.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think of like the groups that would spin up every time Facebook would make a change. It's like the 1 million strong against the, and it'll be like some little tiny component change or something.
Yep. Yeah, that's I rem I don't remember what exactly this is referring to, but um I think we did something where we like changed our avatars from like square to circle or something like that. Or we changed something that was previously a square and then we changed it to circle. And then there was this like Reddit thread about how that was just like a dumb design decision. And then somebody was just like literally in the comments was like, yo, F circles. And it's like, what?
What did circles ever do to you?
I know, like it's just people are just gonna hate no matter what. But it is like interesting being a designer or somebody who's like concerned with design on a product like that because you do really have to think like, okay, is the demographic gonna be the main demographic that uses this like gonna be happy or okay with this change that we're making?
Yeah.
Um, and is it gonna like Salesforce, for example, people use it for their job. So
Yeah.
like, I mean, this is kind of crappy to say, but whether they like it or not, they still like have to use it. But like no one's forcing anyone to use Twitch, especially a lot of like viewers. So it's like we just kind of have to do things to hopefully appease them or make their experience better, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I I know some like web dev people have started using Twitch instead of streaming on like YouTube or something like that. Um, so I'm kind of curious, like, has there been a big uptick in Twitch usage during, shelter in place because everybody's like bored and or some people aren't bored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think based on what I remember from like all hands meetings, I think like Twitch is still doing fine. And I can assume that people are using Twitch more, just like you said, because everyone's at home. And I like have friends personally who like I've noticed have started illustrating on Twitch. They've like started DJing on Twitch. Yeah, they've been doing like web dev, like live streaming on Twitch. And so I'm just like peripherally noticing people in my communities using it more.
Yeah.
And then there's just like all of these artists now, like famous musicians who are using it because they can't like play at clubs anymore and they can't like play at parties anymore. So they're like streaming on Twitch now, which is pretty interesting because I think like even 2 or 3 years ago, non-gamers didn't really know about it as much.
Mhm.
And now it's becoming way more of like a space that people just use for any kind of live streaming, which is cool. And I like that.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a bartender, but he didn't use Twitch for like bartending classes, but he will sometimes perform music at bars and do like cover songs where he changes up the lyrics. So he was doing a set with his piano on Twitch, and of course, changing the lyrics to be about like COVID or stuff like that.
That's
Um,
awesome.
it was pretty entertaining to watch.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like or I think that we'll see more and more people using it for like non-gaming purposes.
One thing that I've been curious about is how this has been impacting the design systems. And so I'm curious, like, did you have any like quick changes that you had to roll out and like UI was associated with that? You know, like I think about like on Facebook, they had to put up a banner basically reminding people to stay safe and stay home and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that banner thing specifically is really interesting because like this is totally just an assumption, but I feel like a lot of people who are using Twitch are at home when they're using it.
Yeah.
Like they're either playing video games at home or they're watching people play video games at home. So um, we didn't really have to do anything like that. And I think we got really lucky because we just did like a complete brand new overhaul of our design system, like the branding and everything last summer. So we had like already launched this new look and feel. Like we fixed a bunch of components. We did like a ton of work on that front. And then this happened, and it's like, I think there could have been more things that we would have had to probably change. But because we had like just gone through a ton of changes, we got lucky in not having to do much. I think like how it impacts our design system, um, it didn't impact it a whole lot because we have been running pretty smoothly. And for us, it's been very much like business as usual. As features come up, we just need to help service them however we can. And that's honestly been pretty great. I think for certain teams, like you said, like their design systems had to like spin up new things, or they had to work on servicing like really random one-off features. But for us, like because things have been so chill, it's like allowed us to be a little bit more calm despite like everything else that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Um, so it's been pretty good for us overall.
Cool. Um, I just want to give them like Todd, if you have any questions and want to get it in before we before we close. But let me see. I had a question and then it like disappeared. It'll come back to me probably after we end the call.
That's how it always is.
Yeah. Well, I guess since we're coming up in the last 5 minutes, I can go ahead and ask, is there anything, you know, I know you had some speaking engagements before, and I'm kind of curious if you have anything coming up. Thanks, Todd. Do you have anything coming up for you that we can look out for, as well as any ways that the community can support you?
That's a really kind question. I am really interested in learning more about ways to do things like talks and just, I guess, more like public community engagement,
Mm-hmm.
because I know that a lot of conferences have been getting canceled. Places that I was like planning to apply to and stuff like that have been getting canceled. And so I wondered like how are like conference organizers, like this could be a question back for you, like how are conference organizers dealing with this kind of thing? Like do we think that there's going to be less conferences in general like this year or something like that because of everything that's happening?
Mm-hmm. So I'm in a Slack for design conference organizers, and the trend seems to be everybody's trying to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
I think I only know of like maybe one or two conferences that just outright cancel, but for the most part, everyone's trying to find, you know, virtual solutions, and as well as myself for clarity. And it's been interesting, but I'm grateful for that Slack because we have all been like sharing our experiences, and some people have already completed their virtual conferences and now are sharing like takeaways and what they've learned. So it's been great because then we can kind of know any struggles or mishaps or things that they've gone through and know to expect it, like, you know, when we go through it. So um, I know not everybody's in that Slack, so I feel bad for people that are at it alone trying to figure it out, but um,
Right.
the design conference community has been like super, just really uplifting and helpful, which has been great. I feel like there's a lot of conferences that postponed to the end of the year that are probably realizing it's probably not going to happen. But
Yeah.
yeah, it makes me also think about what conferences will be like going forward. Like, they might forever be um, virtual or some sort of hybrid. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it's interesting because people who are like younger in their careers, like I know for me, as I was like coming up in my career, having conference talks was just another way to, I guess, be able to like talk confidently about my work and just like prove to people and to myself that like I know what I'm doing or I know what I'm talking about or something like that. Um, Not as much so to just like add another bullet point to my resume, you know? Um, and so it's interesting because like I think younger people in the industry aren't really going to have those opportunities as much, unless these things do go digital and it does like, you know, still flourish in the same way. But I'm interested to see how they evolve in general. And then as for like other community stuff, I I don't know. I think it's interesting for me as like a person who like got more value in doing some of these things in person, like learning how I would fit into the ecosystem if it was all digital. Like, am I still going to be able to pay attention if I'm on like a 6 hour Zoom thing,
Yeah.
just listening to people talk and stuff like that? So I think it'll be interesting to see how this evolves for me. As of right now, I have nothing coming up because I'm still trying to like figure out what makes sense, you know, and like see how the community is reacting and evolving to this. But I will definitely, my Twitter's the place to look for any updates.
You'll want to follow Isha if you don't already because she's very funny. I enjoy your tweets.
Yikes. Thank you. I'm maybe controversial sometimes, but
But I think in a
someone
good.
has to say it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this, and thanks Todd for coming. And yeah, like this has been awesome. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me, Gina.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.